Elephants in the Boardroom is brought to you by our friends at Achilles. Achilles is a sustainable supply chain risk management company. They support the world's biggest companies to create and maintain ethical, sustainable, and transparent supply chains. While we navigate our way through the elephants in the boardroom, Achilles are leading the way, helping businesses navigate the risks and opportunities associated with many of these grey elephants. So if you're a person who is interested in the impact of change on your supply chains or your ESG strategies, it's worth speaking to Achilles. Head over to achilles.com and tell them we sent you. Welcome to the Elephants in the Boardroom podcast. My name is Graeme Codrington, coming to you today live from Johannesburg in South Africa. And as always, I'm joined by my colleague,
Dean van Leeuwen, and I'm here south of London. So Graeme, before we dive into today's episode, we've got some sad news. I just want to take a moment to mention that Paul Stanley, the CEO of Achilles, and someone who we were privileged to interview on this podcast in the 4th episode, passed away recently. Paul was not only a respectful leader in the supply chain and ESG space, but he was a generous supporter of this podcast. The interview with him was amazing. He brought sharp insight, quiet humility, and deep commitment to creating a better, more transparent business world. We're grateful for the time he gave us. Our condolences go out to his family, and let's dedicate this episode to his memory.
Absolutely. Another reminder that we must cherish the life that we have and the relationships that we have. And to Achilles as well, we send our condolences too. So Dean, as we look around the world at the moment, as we always do in the podcast, the big question is, what's on your radar? What are you seeing that maybe is worth our time and attention in these grey elephants that are rumbling through every boardroom around the world? What are you seeing, Dean?
So Graeme, before I share what's on my radar, I want to start with one of my favorite quotes. It comes from the IBM CEO, Ginni Rometty. And back in 2015, she made a bold prediction. She said, in the future, every decision that humankind makes will be informed by some form of artificial intelligence. Now, at the time, I thought, wow, the statement's visionary. It's provocative. And Graeme, as you know, I've pretty much every keynote presentation I've given over the past 10 years, I've used a slide that had that quote on it. In truth, because it sounded futuristic. But today, it reads more like a quiet statement of fact. If you look at the rise of ChatGPT, generative AI, digital twins, AI agents, Rometty's vision has not only materialized, it's accelerated. It was prophetic. And what's on my radar this month is what they're calling Agentic AI. It's a term that we've increasingly seen used, and there are several important research reports that have been recently released, and we'll share the links to these reports in the show notes. Agentic AI, it's being referred to by some people as the next frontier in artificial intelligence. Now, Graeme, I know you have some skepticism about generative AI. Do you want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, so maybe just let's make sure we get all of our definitions right with this. So like most things in AI, these are huge labels that refer to lots and lots of different things. And Dean, you're right to remind us that AI, artificial intelligence, has been a focus, especially for technology companies, for half a century already. Generative AI, ChatGPT in November 2022, was obviously a particular application of artificial intelligence. But the concept of getting machines that are able to think, make decisions, and obviously in the end, we'll probably end up with some form of artificial consciousness. And again, we don't even have the language for exactly what all of these things mean. In the middle of all of that, from, unsupervised machine learning to conscious machines and so on, is this idea of an agent. And an agent is something that can keep an eye on a variety of factors. We are being slightly vague in that because agentic AI can apply to anything from logistics and a supply chain, all the way through to making sure you've got fresh milk in your fridge. It really can be applied at any level. It can look at your inbox and answer emails for you, and it could make appointments to go and see a gym instructor. And what agentic AI is, the dream of it is, it is a system that can watch the thing that you ask it to watch at various trigger points or decision-making points in the system. It can evaluate the information it's got, make a decision, and then trigger further actions. So, in essence, it's an agent, right? An agent that you ask them to do something for you, they go off and do it, and they come back and tell you they succeeded or failed. So, with that in mind, I do agree that agents, let's be careful of the hype around the agentic AI version of it. But computerized agents are definitely something that are coming. And it can be as simple as a rule that you put in your inbox that sorts your incoming mail for you and throws some into the urgent pile and others into the to read later pile. That's essentially an agent that's already working. The worst ever created agent was Microsoft's Clippy. Remember that? It popped up at the top of the screen every time. I think you're trying to write an email. Can I help you? So it's been around for a while. But I'm a little bit skeptical now with that under our belt. I'm a little bit skeptical that these generative AI companies, so I'm specifically thinking of Microsoft under the guise of Copilot, of Google under the guise of their Llama model, and they've got a few others, and OpenAI with their ChatGPT and agentic systems there. I'm a little bit skeptical at the moment of the hype around them. To be frank, I don't believe some of what they're telling us they're actually doing with it. Microsoft's CEO recently, Satya Nadella, gave the most obvious PR spin podcast interview where he said he doesn't read books or listen to podcasts. He loads them into Copilot and then on the way to work has a conversation with Copilot about the books and the podcasts. I don't believe that for a second. Sorry, Satya. I just don't believe that you're actually doing that. So the skepticism is that the existing generative AI systems, I don't think, have the capability to deliver what our dream is. But the dream of agentic AI, I think, is a good one. I just think it's probably further away than you think it is, Dean.
No, Graeme, I think that's fair, and I think it's always important to look past the hype. So I certainly get the skepticism that you have. Let's put a different lens on this. Let's sort of think back, because what we talk about these grey elephants is how they're converging. And they're creating these once-in-a-century transformations when everything that we're doing fundamentally shifts and the way in which we work and so on changes. So, I always reflect back to, 100 years ago to the last sort of sharp transformation that we experienced. And people said the automobile would never replace the horse. It was noisy, it was unreliable, it was only for the elite. They believed it wasn't the right machine and certainly not the right path to get us to the future. And I think what they missed was the transformational agenda that these tools, that this new technology offered them. And I think, if I dig into what you're saying, I think you would agree with that. It's the transformational agenda. The machines and that, I think, will change, or how they use them or so on will change. Because, Henry Ford didn't invent the car. He didn't even invent the production line. What he did was he used breakthrough technology and thinking of this time to reimagine the way that work was done. Overnight, he doubled the wage of workers. He introduced the continuous production line. And in doing so, he reshaped the world. And what I'd like to wager, this is my little prediction, is that agentic AI, in some form or another, is playing a similar role today. And not because it's perfect, but because it's going to enable clever people to completely rethink how workflows and decision-making happens inside organizations. I think it's going to open the door to completely different operating models altogether. And to me, that's the gray elephant here. Stats are showing that, CTOs and CEOs and that, 70% of them are saying that they're on top of AI. But when you look at the stats, only 10% of them are actively working on projects involving agentic AI. They're tinkering around the edges. They're experimenting. And to me, that's the elephant in the room. And companies, they're not doing enough. And I think, agentic AI, it's highly probable. As you said, it's the dream. And I think we're moving towards that dream a lot faster than people are imagining. At the moment, investment figures are saying there's a staggering 41% CAGR growth now between now and 2030. And I think that investment in that is going to propel things past the kind of hype. So let's dig a little bit deeper here and think a bit more about this. And so you're right, AI is largely meant, it's been tools like chatbots and automation scripts and telling your email inbox to perform certain tasks if these things happen. But they're still relied on human prompts, okay? Agentic AI it's a model that's going to turn that on its head. New systems are going to act with autonomy. They're not going to wait for instructions. They're going to take the initiatives. They're going to plan. They're going to strategize. They're going to execute tasks. They're not going to wait to be told what to do. They're just going to get on with the job. If you think about agentic AI, AI and ChatGPT and these things, they work within a set of boundaries. They follow the rules. They react to triggers. Agentic AI handles missions, not just tasks. I kind of like to think of this as you have a chief of staff who sets the agenda. They adapt the strategy in real time. They make trade-offs without needing your consent for approval. So that's kind of what I'm seeing at the moment. And I think it's going to have a big impact. And there's some great examples of companies out there are using this specifically in the supply chain arena. But let me stop there for a moment, Graeme, and get your thoughts on what I've been saying.
I agree with everything you're saying, Dean. And I suppose for me, what I would hope that people would do, those who are listening, watching this podcast and thinking of it from a business perspective, is I think the big mistake that people are making at the moment is they think of AI, generative AI, even agentic AI, as a cost reduction, headcount reducing, automating process. And I think that that's the dead end move, that it's simply a cost containment, an automation approach. I really hope, and I think that the companies that get the best out of it, the hope is this is part of our, at Tomorrow Today, our innovation process, where we help people to say, you've got to look at your business through the eyes of your customer or your client. Understand what is really valuable to them, not what's valuable to you in terms of cost reduction and efficiency and smoothness of internal processes, but end result. And if you can do that and reduce headcount at the same time, fantastic. But start with the end result. So a simple example from my side, Dean, is recently I ordered a crate of wine from one of my favorite wine farms down in the Western Cape. And I got a note saying, your wine will be delivered on a certain day. And on the day that it was due to be delivered, at 8 o'clock on the dot in the morning, I got a message saying, your wine is out for delivery this morning. It will be delivered to you at 1:42 p.m. this afternoon. Now, Dean, think about this. In online shopping, internet shopping is going crazy, but what happens? It's your package will be delivered between 8 and 5 tomorrow. And you go, well, I can't stay at home all of that time, and you leave it on the porch, but it's raining, someone will steal it. This is no. We will be at your house by 1:42. And I thought, no, how is this even possible? And true as nuts, Dean, at 1:41, the doorbell rang and there was the delivery driver. And I actually asked, what on earth are you guys doing in the background? And it's AI, not quite agentic AI yet, but it's an AI thing that said, these are all the routes you have to go. This is the traffic you have to get through. This is the time of year, day of week, weather. There's a whole lot of factors put in. It isn't actually that difficult. And you could imagine a company that has an agentic AI delivery system that basically manages all of that in the background, gives the routings to each of the drivers, updates in real time. And honestly, this might not sound like a big example, but I think it's a huge example because it's a frustration that billions, not just millions, billions of people must experience every day. And if you can take that frustration away and make life better for people, they're going to say, you're brilliant, and they're going to buy into your system. So if agentic AI does more than just streamline and optimize internal processes, I'm all for it.
Randy is spot on. It's all about reimagining the workflows of how you do things. You've now got very capable technology, and it shouldn't be used as a blunt technology to cut costs and improve efficiencies. It should be used to save and solve big problems for customers. So I think it's a great example. And as you were saying there, I was thinking you could kind of imagine agentic AI sort of interfacing with what 3 words, that app that can pinpoint you down to within a meter of where you are. You could activate it and say, actually, I'm waiting for this parcel, but I need to pop to the shop. So I'm going to activate what 3 words going to speak to the agentic AI agent. The AI agent will inform the driver, and the driver will reroute and go, oh, actually, I can pop past Graeme now and deliver the parcel even sooner because he's closer to where I am on this route. And all of that could be done with not human interaction, but make the customer experience and even the driver experience better than what it would have been previously. I think that's the crux here. It's how do we use this technology to create hyper productivity, superhuman performance, bionic performance, and that's the key kind of crux of message. So, I've been looking into case studies here, and Walmart is doing some really interesting work with agentic AI, and they've seen the impact of their work has been, stockouts have been reduced by 20%, excessive inventory has been cut by 15%. They've saved an estimated 400 million in supply chain costs. So there are companies out there who are using this past just tinkering and experimentation. They are completely reimagining their workflows and dramatically changing things. So I think it's an exciting grey elephant. We keep and watch out. I think it is a grey elephant because it's in the boardroom. I think a lot of businesses are thinking they're doing a lot, but I don't think they're doing even half enough of what's needed.
I think that's a great call for something to look out for. Look beyond the hype. Look to add real value in the world. You started with a quote from the CEO of IBM. One of my favorite quotes, Dean, maybe sums this up nicely, that the best type of innovation in the world at the moment is not merely finding solutions to our existing problems. It's about finding better problems to solve. And I think if we can use agentic AI to solve some problems we don't think are solvable at the moment, in other words, our clients' problems, not ours, and if we make the world a better place by even looking for better problems to solve, then I'm all for it. If all agentic AI does is make it easier for me to check my inbox and to schedule meetings with my boss, count me out. I think we might have not used it properly yet. Anyway, good call. Thank you. So let's get on to our quiz. Regular listeners will know that Dean and I like to stretch each other's understanding of the world. And genuinely, some people have asked us, is this just a bit that you guys do and you've scripted this? No, we freak each other out every month by coming in hot with a very difficult question. So Dean, I'll tell you, I'm slightly nervous about the stats I'm about to rely on. But anyway, I'll just go for it. Coming from as our friends at the website Visual Capitalist, highly recommended as a way of visualizing a lot of different stats around the world. This is a visualization that they put out recently on types of government in the world. So Dean, there's let's round it off to roughly 200 countries in the world, representing roughly 8 billion people. if we round that all off, they did it up to 1,000 just to make the visualization work nicely. But you can do it in percentages, right? So if we round all of that, if everybody in the world, every 8 million people in the world was represented in a world parliament, my question is, if you imagine the options we've got for government, from on the far side, you've got monarchs and autocratic leaders, right? So this is the countries that are led by kings, queens, and autocrats. Then coming a little bit further in, you've got authoritarian leaders. So it's sort of ish democracy maybe, but it's mainly, there's still a main leader on it, even though they don't claim to be a king. Then you've got sort of center-right governments. Okay, so you're still with me? There's a first 3 types. Then centrist, then center-left, and far left. Okay, so you've got the full spread, right? The far left kind of being maybe the more communist side, the more aimed at sort of social and sort of ultra-socialist almost.
Okay.
Right, so if you've got that picture in mind, I'm looking for the percentages of each of these. And I'll tell you that the centrist crowd are actually the smallest group. They account for less than 10%. Okay? And so if that sort of is it's not the middle, that's I'll give you a little bit, enough of a hint there. Your first easy question to get going is, do you think there's more to the right, authoritarian right-wing governments, or more to the left of center? And remember, this is by population. So China's there, Russia's there, India's there, America's there.
I can imagine that some of the authoritarian governments could also be communist.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So you'd have authoritarian sort of regimes on the left and the right.
Yes, and I think that, no, good call, and I think they've put them on authoritarian, so they're on the right. So any that you might think is communist and authoritarian, they go off to the right.
Okay, so then I would probably say, I know India is the largest sort of true democracy, and that's a pretty large population.
Yeah, and where would you put India?
Probably centrist or just off centre.
I would call it centre right, and that's what this visualization calls it, centre right. So you've probably already answered your question, because if China's a little bit authoritarian and India's centre right, then there's half of the world's population's already on that side. So how would you split it? If I tell you that it's actually 70% to the right, okay? So 10% is centrist, 20% is left, and the rest is right. What do you think the split is between kind of, if India is sort of center-right and China is more autocratic, you can imagine it's almost half-half. But then where would all the others fit in there? How do you think that plays itself out? So a specific question, what do you think the percentage is of autocratic government in the world? The percentage of people in the world under autocratic government.
And this would include countries like China?
This includes all countries, yes. But China, I think, is included in that list, yeah.
I think it's quite high. I would put it somewhere between 30 and 40%, 35%.
You got it. And then if India is a centre-right and there's a few other centre-rights, that's another, that makes up the other bulk of it. And for those who are watching the video version of this, we've put the image up now, and Dean, you can have a look at it as well. For those of you who might only be listening to us, we'll put a link to the Visual Capitalist webpage of this in the show notes. But I was, as a person who considers myself a left-leaning, more progressive person, I was horrified, Dean, to realize that I am in a very small minority of people who that would be the type of country I would like to live in. And for me it was fascinating. You live in the UK in one that they consider to be centre-left, although I might argue with that a little bit, to be honest. I think Labour at the moment in the UK is steering a little bit more to the right. I think they're quite scared of Reform, who are obviously much more right than that. They've listed my country, South Africa, as sort of extreme left. I disagree with that. I think we're only just a little bit left of centre, but still, leftish. So both of us are in leftish countries, but we are in the minority in the world, Dean. And I think, and now we lead into my grey elephant here out of that. So again, congrats, you stumped me, and I have yet to stump you, I think. If you feel like change is happening faster than your ability to keep up, you're not alone. At Tomorrow Today Consulting, we've worked with hundreds of leaders who felt exactly the same way until they learned how to spot the big changes coming before their competitors did. Here's what we've discovered. The companies thriving right now aren't the ones with the best products. They're actually the ones who saw the disruption coming and positioned themselves ahead of it. And that's what our grey elephants radar and framework is all about. We've helped, for example, a global mining company rethink its entire strategy to navigate economic volatility and local unrest, shifting from reactive operations to long-term resilience, and at the same time, delivering unprecedented profits. We worked with a major UK retailer, for example, to turn growing pressure around plastic pollution into a powerful brand differentiator, transforming a risk into a sustainable leadership story. So, whether it's through our Skunkworks innovation labs, keynote presentations and workshops, or our strategic consulting, we're here to turn uncertainty into competitive advantage. So if you're tired of playing catch up with change, visit our website, tomorrowtoday.consulting, because the future belongs to the leaders who see it coming.
Just one point before you go, Graeme, there's a data point that has really interested me recently. Is I came across a piece of research that was saying that 50% of Gen Z would prefer to live in under an authoritarian government than a democracy.
I saw that as well, yeah.
That blew my mind. And then when you look at the stats of authoritarian governments and so on, and true democracies are under 10%. That's the minority. And yet we look at the world, the lens we look at it through this sort of Western democratic viewpoint. And it just shows the potential bias there when the vast majority are living under different systems.
So, Dean, that is exactly the grey elephant that I want to discuss, because you and I agree on this, but I wonder how much of a minority we are in. You and I have this feeling that we are at the end of quite a significant era. It might even be a 250-year-long era where sort of capitalism and communism were fighting it out to say who's right, who's wrong. And when we say left and right, that's typically what we've meant in the past. Capitalism versus communism. But those labels don't work anymore. Exactly your point about where would you put Russia, where would you put China. Actually, these labels don't work as well as they used to. And that's the wind of change that's coming, is the fact, and the fact then that younger generations, for different reasons than their grandparents are hearkening back to a vaguely remembered great time of history that didn't actually exist, but it's sort of been romanticized. Younger people are just saying, I don't want to waste time with all this discussion and democracy. Can somebody just fix the system for me? And it's that strongman theory, right? Of just saying, give it to somebody to fix the system. Hopefully they don't abuse it, be corrupt, or become crazy in the process. And that's where history maybe tells young people, just hang on, it doesn't quite work out the way you're hoping. But for me, the elephant I wanted to talk about was not actually those winds of change, but the implications for business leaders of our ability to actually choose a side. So if the winds of change are also mapped onto the world's conflicts, so you've got America in conflict with Mexico in particular, but obviously many other places. You've got Israel and Gaza, but now Israel and Iran as well, two competing worldviews. You've got China always sort of half threatening Taiwan and Hong Kong, and others. You've got India and Pakistan, and a lot of these conflicts, and Russia and Ukraine, and a lot of these conflicts are not just territorial conflicts. Yes, they are, but they are also religious, they are also cultural, they are also ethnic, they are also economic, they are also political. So it's like all of the factors that make up a society, you end up with a competing clash point that happens to be geographically neighbors, but they are very different in their approach. And I don't necessarily want to talk about any of those clash points specifically, but I want to talk about what position does that put you in if you are the leader of a business or you are a business. So, for example, there were quite a few companies that exited Russia very quickly after Russia invaded Ukraine and made a big deal of saying, we're shutting our shops, we're leaving our offices, we're exiting. And that was everything from retail goods to professional services firms. Almost none of those have done that for Israel. None of them did that for India or Pakistan. If China exerted control over Taiwan, would they all leave China? I doubt it. And so there's this interesting thought for me, Dean, and I think it is a grey elephant, because I think that at some point in these debates, you reach a point where your silence has in fact chosen a side. And can companies stay neutral? I suppose it's a question, and I'm going to just throw the question to you and see what you say. Is it possible for a company to remain neutral in such a big historical shift? And as I say, I don't want to make it about a particular choice and a particular conflict. I want people to reflect on the fact that it's happening in many different ways, in many different factors, in many different parts of the world. And so I don't think we can and should remain silent, but I think it's what corporate are hoping they can do.
Graeme, I think it's nuanced with incredible complexity, and business leaders are having to navigate these challenges and these shifts. And I think for us we talk about multipolarity, and that is the shift in power blocks and power bases. And the big problem, and that's why we call it an elephant in the boardroom, is that it's been largely ignored. Businesses have operated in a world where they've seen the sort of Western dominance and globalization and so on, and they haven't realized just how rapidly these BRICS and T25 nations, how dominant they're becoming, and how rapidly they've emerged. And for a while they were emerging, and many leaders were kind of looking at how they might make profits out of it, or offshore or whatever. And I think many leaders have missed this shift, this transition, and now they're playing catch up. And the elephant in the room has become more visible, but they're not sure what to do with it. And the response is then the knee jerk, and it often looks like, well, we do one thing in one area and another thing in another area, and it's just because this hasn't been strategically thought through. And companies don't know really what it is that they should be doing. So I think they're also basing their decisions on what they think the investors want. All of this is, as you say, thinking about customers, and that it's a recipe for disaster. Many customers will say, well, we'll stick by what you believe, or prove that to us, and we will align with the brands that align with our values. And when companies look like they're not aligning with that, you see them stop being loyal and moving away. I can point out many companies that I have been incredibly loyal with and have started being completely disloyal as a result of the shift just over the past 12, 24 months and that we've seen. I think it's a great grey elephant, and something that companies need to be thinking through a lot closer and in a lot more detail, is really evaluating, exploring what these shifts mean. And where they're going to align, and what they're going to stand. Are they Western leaning? Are they leaning towards the east, the west, the center, the middle? Where do they sit, or do they play across the spectrum? And what does a strategy like that entail? And I think Trump's caught a lot of people off guard with this whole onshoring, friendshoring, nearshoring approach and globalization unraveling. Companies have been caught out by these grey elephants. But the ones that were watching multipolarity, they will have seen this coming.
I think you're right, Dean. And I think this is one of those situations where there isn't a right answer, right? And different companies and different people can make different decisions. What we're just asking people to do, and what the elephants in the boardroom mindset brings them, is to at least just raise this to the level of a strategic conversation in your business. You may have a leadership team with multiple different views and allegiances who find themselves on opposite sides of global conflicts. And you shouldn't shy away from that conversation. You should lean into it. That's what we're saying. So we're not telling you what decision to make in any of these discussions, but we are saying you should be having the discussion, and you should be finding a way to allow the viewpoints of the people who make up your ecosystem. That will include all your stakeholders, from shareholders and investors to senior leaders to workers, employees, and clients, right? So for some of our clients, that's a global, multipolar set of stakeholders themselves. You can't just think that saying nothing is okay. I understand that you might want to try and say nothing for as long as possible, to just remain neutral. But there comes a time when neutrality has already chosen a side. And it's the side of the oppressor, the aggressor. That's how it works. I can quote the most famous South African religious cleric, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, that silence is a choice for the status quo, the oppressor, the aggressor. And that I think is a setting. So you've then got to, as a company, realize silence is not always going to be an option. And how then are you going to deal with these things? So all we're saying, I suppose, today is make sure you have this conversation. It's a tough conversation, but it's a conversation that if you don't have it, you might find a herd of elephants storming through your organization, as companies like McDonald's in Israel discovered. So there are lots of examples where it's gone badly wrong for companies because they just didn't think it would impact them, and it does.
No, Graeme, there's some really brilliant thoughts and wise words there. It's what we always say about these grey elephants. When a grey elephant appears, it's too late to prepare. So spend time thinking about these things, having the conversations, exploring what they mean for your business. And if they happen, then you're ready. As we said, these are highly probable, high impact forces of change. They are colliding. Don't get caught unaware or off guard, because then you are scrambling. So it's better to have the conversations up front.
And let me just give one practical example of that, just to help people understand what it might look like in real life. I won't mention the company's name. You'll see why in a moment, but it's one of our clients, a long-standing client. They do a lot of work across Africa. And when Uganda passed the anti-LGBTQI laws, which made it illegal to be gay in Uganda, this company had already thought it through. They did a survey of their staff members and discovered that in Uganda, there were people who were gay. Not necessarily out, but they made it safe enough for these people to say, yes, this legislation might be a problem for me. And I know in the background that the senior partner in Uganda of this company has a company credit card and authorization to take any means possible to protect their staff if an anti-LGBTQI issue happens. You can hire a helicopter, you can, get private security in, you can evacuate out of the country, just put it on the card, we'll sort it out later. And so they've sort of needed to remain a little bit neutral in their stance, their public stance, about, in Pride Month and things like that. They need to be a little bit careful out of respect for their staff, but they've thought it through. And they've made a decision. We are pro-LGBTQI and pro our staff being safe. And internally, it's understood that the company protects them. That must be wonderful, to work in Uganda as an LGBTQI person or an LGBTQI ally and know that even though my country is opposed to me, my company's got my back. And I think they will get long-term benefit from that call. Just an example, not saying you need to do it that way, but an example of a company that decided to deal with one of these cultural issues and big systems change issues directly and I think practically.
Great example.
Okay, so with that little view of what's been going on in the last few weeks over, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we just this month going to do something a little bit different. We're just going to take you behind the scenes a little bit, tell you a little bit of the history of this Grey Elephants framework and how we came up with it. I think you'll find it interesting. See you after the break.
Well, welcome back, everyone. As Graeme mentioned just before the break, we want to talk to you a little bit about the story behind the Grey Elephant framework. We can go all the way back to COVID-19 pandemic. When it hit, everyone was scrambling, and we were thinking about ways. We were doing lots of research around how we could help our clients deal with the disruption. How would they be able to navigate through the chaos that they were experiencing? And there was a lot of commentary about COVID being a black swan, a high impact, unpredictable force of change. But we knew better. For decades, Graeme, in our Tides of Change presentation, we've been talking about pandemics, global pandemics. We were saying that leaders needed to keep their eye on this because it would be disruptive. Bill Gates, famously in his TED talk, I think it was 2016, he raised the red flag and he said, we need to be prepared for pandemics. So they weren't black swans, but we started to do this research and helping our clients, and something unexpected happened. We came across other forces that had a similar profile to the pandemic. They were highly probable, high impact, but largely ignored forces of change or forces of progress. And this was an eye-opening moment for us. We hadn't been looking for these forces. They emerged through the work that we were doing. But once we saw this, this pattern, we couldn't unsee it. And these weren't isolated forces. They were converging. They were colliding. They were amplifying one another. It was like these 7 hurricanes colliding and creating a cascading pattern of disruption across business, politics, society. That's really where the Grey Elephant model kind of came from, was identifying that it wasn't just a pandemic. That was the bad news. It's not just the pandemic you need to be navigating through. There are these other forces. There were 7 in total. But then we started to identify actually that within this perfect storm, there were perfect opportunities. And one thing that became clear to us was that these forces weren't just causes of failures or risks. They were the unintended consequences of progress. So take plastic, for example. A wonder material. It's light, it's durable, it's versatile, it's affordable, it's revolutionized healthcare, food safety, packaging. It's modern life itself revolves around plastic. But today it's also a global pollutant. So this single innovation that now touches it touches multiple grey elephants. It fuels the angry planet. It triggers rising rage. It impacts big squeezes because plastic is a product of fossil fuel. It activates intelligent advances. There are innovators seeking biodegradable material and clean energy alternatives. So we see over time, over history, innovations, great innovations. There are massive positive effects, but there are also side effects to these innovations. And that's what we see happening. Every 100 years or so, these side effects start to boil up and new technologies come on stream. And society looks at this and we have to reconfigure. We have to find solutions for the old problems, for the side effects. And often it's the new technology that takes us forward. But these points of convergence are very, I don't want to say volatile. The world, I think, is always volatile. You've probably come across the term VUCA. We recently came across a new term called banny. Things are brittle, they are breaking. This is leading to anxiety, stress, anger, anxieties at heightened levels. Things are non-linear. They don't no longer make sense, and incomprehensible things happen. Things we couldn't even have imagined would happen are starting to happen. And that's the shift that we are living in. And the grey elephants gives us that lens to look at this banny world, to look at this sharp transformation, this once-in-a-century transformation that we're living through. So, Graeme, that's a little bit of a background to the story. The model was we birthed it during the pandemic. We saw all of these forces, but actually they're forces of great opportunity.
Yeah, and for me, Dean, there are three elements to that, right? So for 20 plus years, we've been helping people to try and anticipate the future. I remember the first series of futurist talks we did 20 years ago. People would invite you back over and over again. Just tell us about the forces, the things that are happening. These days, we've talked already about Agentic AI in this episode. You can just go onto ChatGPT and say, what are the top 10 forces impacting my industry? And you'll get probably about as good a list as we were giving people 20 years ago. And as you say, it was about 5 years ago or so, and COVID sort of triggered this in a huge way, that people realized it's not about just having a list of potential disruptors anymore. The first key thing about these grey elephants is that we kind of know that list, right? You can ask a group of 100 business people, they'll all come up with similar lists. The question is, do you really believe the level of impact that this event could have, that this could have? And I really still think that a lot of people think that the world is basically ticking over. It's heading in a direction largely predictable, maybe faster than we hoped or imagined. But to believe that there's deep structural change taking place in front of our very eyes, the rules changing, that's the first thing, big impact. The second thing is this opportunity mindset. Because our brains are tuned to see threats. Our brains are tuned to see, oh no, everything I know, everything I've worked for is coming to an end. In the middle of that, there's this tuning to the kairos opportunity, this moment of transformational change, that if you are ready for it, and that's the third element, is that if you wait for these things to become obvious to everybody in your business, it's going to be too late. Either too late to deal with it or too late to take advantage of the competitive edge you could get. And so it's that opportunity mindset that prepares you for what could happen. And here maybe a practical example is useful. I think China has been very ready for Donald Trump's tariffs. So there are clips, you can go and see them on TikTok and YouTube, of Donald Trump talking to Oprah Winfrey about tariffs. And we're talking 15 years ago, when he was he was a celebrity TV host, and he's mouthing off to Oprah Winfrey about tariffs. Nobody should have been surprised that one of the first things he did as he came in as president was put tariffs. Now, the size of the tariffs, the scale of the tariffs, the fact that he put it on every single country, including an island that only has got penguins on it, okay, you can have a little bit of fun with that information. But nobody should have been surprised. And then he goes a step further and he starts to put blockages on Harvard University and higher education university. And I think that as I've been watching China, maybe even more closely than America in the last 150 days, I almost can see the Chinese people just going, yes, make your next move. Yes. Oh, good. He's making that exact move we thought he would. Exactly. Keep going, Donald, keep going. Because they just keep responding almost as if they had the script in advance. My favorite example recently was of when Donald Trump said you can't have foreign students at Harvard. Every single foreign student at Harvard got an email from the Chinese government the following day saying you are welcome to come to any one of our universities at whatever fees you're paying. Those are the fees you're going to pay us. And then, by the way, the week after, they sent an email to every professor at Harvard saying, if you move to China, we will fund your research for 10 years and you can pick your location. And it's almost like if you're ready for disruption, if you're ready for a big elephant to walk in the front door, you can go, now's our time, and get it going. So for me, the last 5 years have been a shift from saying, our strategy and our strategic planning should just be about getting a list of all the things that could happen, to now saying, what are the deep structural things that could take place? First thing, what are the opportunities in that structural change? And what must we do to be ready if they happen? And I think it's a very different approach to thinking about strategy and thinking about planning, and it makes you more anti-fragile, and that's a word we also like.
It reminds me of what Neil Froneman said when we interviewed him for the Grey Elephant, for the Elephant in the Boardroom podcast. Well, the question I asked him was, which of the grey elephants kind of keep you up at night? And he looked at me and he said, I'm not worried about any of them stampeding, because myself, my executive team, we've analyzed them, we've explored them, we understand them. And now our executive team talks about dancing with the elephants. We take advantage of them. We're no longer scared of them. We dance with them. I thought that was wonderful.
And maybe that's as good a place as any to leave people this month, that it isn't just about being overwhelmed by the 24-hour news cycle at the moment that just does feel like it's crazier than it's ever been before. But it's also not being overwhelmed by whatever forces of change you think are coming your way in the next little while. It's about almost welcoming those forces into your life, into your business, and saying, okay, what are the dance steps? Let's dance, play the music, maestro, and see where that takes you.
Sounds great. The once in a century transformation, go out there and make it happen, create the future.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you again next month.
Cheers, everyone. Elephants in the Boardroom is brought to you by our friends at Achilles. Achilles is a sustainability supply chain risk management company. Achilles supports the world's biggest companies to create and maintain ethical, sustainable, and transparent supply chains. So while we navigate our way through the elephants in the boardroom, Achilles are leading the way, helping businesses navigate the risks and opportunities associated with many of these grey elephants. If you're a person who's interested in the impact of change on your supply chains or ESG strategy, it's worth speaking to Achilles. So head over to achilles.com.